Hello, I'm Ricky.
And I'm Joe, and this is Season 6, Episode 10 of the Beer and Broadband Podcast. It's slated to come out on May 29th, 2023. And today we're deviating from what we said we would, because we talked about we were going to do tea on this episode. We were specifically saving this one to do tea, and then we had to change plans. And when we changed plans, I hadn't made the cold brew yet for the tea, so we didn't have enough done. So we're going to do that for the first episode when we come back from our break. During the break, though, we're going to be doing some we're going to some other industry conference stuff, and maybe a little bit more brewing. So we'll see. But this time, what we're going to be doing is looking at the fig wine that we made last year. I think we started it somewhere around August, June, July, August, somewhere around in there. And we bottled it in November of 2022. And it's sat there waiting on the shelf for someone to drink it for like roughly the last six months.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had a couple of bottles of this. It was pretty good when it was young. It was a little harsh, but it was pretty good. So it's 15% ABV, and I think we used... do we use any honey in this?
I think we did.
Yeah, so I think it's, if I remember correctly, it was honey, and then we had a fig jam and a fig
we had a bunch of fig products, and we had whole figs too.
Yep.
And then we put pomegranate juice in it.
Yes, so it's like a pomegranate fig wine drink.
Yeah, and I mean the 6 months aging has really helped it. Not that it was bad originally, but it's much smoother now.
Yeah,
it's a lot of the sweetness has come out of it. And it's a lot now closer to like eating a fig.
It is
like some sort of like dark currant, because it does have the like pomegranate in it, so it's not pure like fig flavor.
Right.
But it's a lot closer to that like I am drinking an alcoholic fruit juice as opposed to something else.
And if I remember correctly, this is dry. It's like 1.01 or something like that. It's not. It tastes so sweet for something that's not sweet at all.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think it was like a semi-sweet. Like it hadn't gone all the way dry, but it got pretty close. It was like just over that line. But yeah, you're right. And I think a lot of that has to do with just how much of the fruit flavor is still there, because it very much does still taste like fruit.
Right.
It tastes like a mix of fig and pomegranate.
Well, I'm going to look on the brew sheet while you're still talking,
Mm-hmm.
and because I know that I put this thing on there.
Yeah, I mean, it looks really well. It's a really nice color. It's not the clearest, but in all honesty, considering how dark the various things we were putting in it were, and all of those fig byproducts were cooked, so like we took a lot of the pectins and upped their concentration by removing water and stuff like that. So overall it's good though. I know we wanted to try this one because we're thinking about taking it to self to share it with people. And you only had one bottle left, but I had a couple, so this is one of my bottles.
I have 2 left also.
Okay, then perfect. Then yeah, we definitely should. I think people would like this.
Yeah, I agree. I think they will. Let's look on the stats on this thing, though, if it'll ever load. I clicked on it. It says that it's going to load. There it goes. And let's see. We're looking for 2022. Man, I've got stuff all the way back to 2018 recipes on this sheet.
Yep, there you go.
Just didn't realize. Okay, so Eventide fig wine. We started it on August 13th, and it finished at 1.032. That was after we had added some more sweetener to it.
Okay.
So it was back sweetened, and it tastes about as sweet as it is.
Yeah. I knew it was a little bit sweeter than that, but it's not crazy. Like it's not a dessert wine. It's not like that 1.05 or anything like that.
No, it's actually pretty okay for the amount of sweetness that it has. So yeah, I mean we've talked about the recipe on it before, but we definitely should give any of our eventually we should probably let some people have access to our recipes.
That's true.
But if you have turkey figs, which I think is what these are, right? If you have turkey figs and a little bit of orange blossom honey and some pomegranate juice, it makes a pretty doggone tasty wine.
It
like
does.
A country fruit wine.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get a better yield this year because we didn't know what the tree was at first,
Mm-hmm.
or like when it would bloom. And for like the longest time, we thought, well, were the beginnings of a budding fruit were a flower about to come out. So by the time we figured out it was a fruit, it was already like time to really start harvesting them. So we didn't really do any like before care. But I know better this year, so now that they're starting to bloom, I'm watering it a lot to give it the moisture it needs to plump up those fruits. So instead of a bajillion little tiny fruits, maybe we'll get like a bunch of big ones.
Yeah. So speaking about that, wife and I went to a place in Raleigh. It's one of the Parks and Rec places, and they were having some classes about how to like grow vegetables and fruits and things like that. It was pretty eye-opening. Some of the things that we were doing wrong, some of the things that we're, doing right. But they were talking about how to like water your plants and things like that. It might be something that you're interested in going to the next time we go to it. It was like $10 to go.
Oh yeah,
It was super cheap. It was real. And they're doing it all through the summer. So
okay, yeah, that might be an interesting class to attend.
Yeah, I think you'd like it.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about planting a bunch of fruit bushes. Because we're going to kind of, now that we've tore up that tree and we've got all this light in the front, I want to put up like blueberries, blackberries, and raspberries.
Well, they talk about that. They talk about like growing in grow bags and growing in above ground planters and stuff like that. So it's pretty good. All right, I just bopped the little cable that I have connecting me to the mic. Whoops. Anyways, let's talk about home server tech. So specifically, let's talk about NASs, because NAS is kind of the kind of thing that someone would buy off the shelf or make, and that's the primary thing that most people are going to use a server for in their home. May also have a media server, so either like file storage or media storage, backups, things like that, and a network attached storage device is going to be able to do all those things generally. There are some times that, depending on how powerful a network attached storage device is, they don't really do that well with those things.
Yeah.
So, one thing that, I think is like an important kind of thing to think about is what are your use cases for whatever you're getting a server for. So like, are you expecting it to do like transcoding and like be able to like have super expandable storage, have like over 100 terabytes of space on it or something like that? I mean, it kind of just depends on what it is that you're seeking. And then the other thing is, like, are you going to be running a home lab off of it? Are you running like any like containers or, Docker or anything like that off of it? So you don't really have a server at home, do you?
Not really. Not something that I would consider at the same level as something like a NAS. Like, I've got servers that run on my computers, but they're not like a separate device.
Right. They're functional servers. They're services that you're providing for something, but not a...
They're logical servers. They're not, like a physical server.
Right. So I have two that I've set up here in my house. One runs FreeNAS, and it's a FreeNAS Mini. And then I have a second server that I've had running for a while that's used enterprise gear. It's a Super Micro. One of them no longer runs a Plex server. It always struggled a bit to run one, but that was my FreeNAS Mini. And then I have a Xeon that's probably like 12 years old at this point that seems to be chugging along just fine. If I wanted to throw a graphics card or something like that in there, that would probably work. And it would do just fine, especially if I was doing something like an NVIDIA or AMD card that's like good at transcoding or something like that. I don't have too many files that are transcoded, but if I ever needed it, I have that availability. I think the thing that made me think about this topic, though, is I was running out of space on my storage server, and this other server that I've got that's hobbled together is just kind of a JBOD. I didn't put like a specific server operating system on it. It just is running like a version of Ubuntu. And so I've got FreeNAS on one, or TrueNAS now. It's not FreeNAS anymore. Back when I bought it, it was still FreeNAS. But I've got TrueNAS on one, and that's got about 30 terabytes of space on it, which is a good amount.
Yep.
But if you have a large media library, or you want to try to hold on to a lot of backups, or you do things like we do where we record stuff and then we have to back it up, you can fill up that space fairly quickly. So then I got this other thing and I started expanding it with just like JBOD little devices that connect up via USB. They can also connect via eSATA, but I don't have eSATA ports on the Supermicro server. So all that said is to say, performance was okay for a long time, but it's gotten to the point to where I felt like I needed better and more stable performance, and I needed something that actually backed up the FreeNAS. Come in a Synology NAS that I've got that's got about the same level of chip that the TrueNAS has in it. It's just the TrueNAS is maybe 5-6 years older.
Okay.
So this one does a little bit better at things like Intel QuickSync and stuff like that. It seems to run anything 1080p, 720p just fine. Because I've got a Plex Media server, of course, running off of it now, right? But the thing that I found to be interesting is, while I can expand, it's got 5 storage bays, and I was able to put 12 terabytes. So I've got about, that one had 30, and it's got 8. Oh, no, this one has 8 too, or 6. Anyways, I ended up just about doubling my capacity.
Okay.
But, the TrueNAS, I think at the time was close to $3,000 when I got it. I didn't pay for it. I got it through like a work type thing, and it's so old now I doubt anybody wants it. So I've just been using it for stuff. But originally I would use it to transfer ISOs around and back up my laptop, host things on it. It's not powerful enough to do it.
Yeah.
That's what the Supermicro took over doing. Of course, it's kind of like getting long in the tooth. So I'm not going to ask for another thing like that. I don't need those capabilities anymore. I have other things within the corporate network that can do those things. So now, or I can do them like an AWS or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So now, what would I use these things for? And home servers are really good. Unfortunately, as good as they are at running stuff, my older servers are starting to have trouble running. So I got this one because I thought, well, this could become my primary server, and then I could use the other ones just as like backup file services, right? What I found, though, is that's much more complex to do than I thought it was. And, when you're going across, because I'm using Synology's disk station software on the new one that I've gotten, the old one has problems with being able to sync stuff between that and the Synology disk station, because they're two completely different types of things. So I'm trying to figure out how I can move a few things around, make some stuff happen, do some archiving, because I don't really want to lose my kit. But ultimately, what it comes down to is, what I found is, I'm not that much more successful with versus the Supermicro server. The Supermicro is still a little bit more powerful than the Synology NAS. The Synology NAS probably cost me about as much as it would to get like a Supermicro and a bunch of hard drives off of eBay. Okay. So, what is the better decision to make? And of course, it comes down to what's the best for you, right? But one of the reasons I think you don't do things like this is you're not that interested in like the technologies that come with it as much. You keep things a little bit simpler. Is that kind of an accurate?
That's probably true. I mean, we've talked about that before, that I'm in the technology industry, but what drives me is I like helping people, and it's a good industry to help people in. I'm good at technology, but I don't have a passion for technology at the same level that you do. So yeah, I mean, I don't have a burning use case for it. So I've just never really bothered to get into it.
Right. So that said, if there was something that you could just buy off the shelf, stick it in your house, and you had the capability to do some of these things, given some of the stuff that we've talked about with like media companies doing crap like they're doing, some of the need that you have to like prepare for like certs and things like that, would you buy something like that, or would you try to cobble something together that would be like, less expensive?
In all honesty, I'd probably just put something together because while I buy like things like my computers, I buy them from places like Ava Direct, where
Mm-hmm.
I'm picking every single part in it, and they're just like charging to assemble it. So I still do all the research on what the parts I want and stuff in. It just saves me the headache, and I get some warranty out of it. For something like a NAS server, I feel like I would just do the research, buy the parts. It'd be cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the skill set to build it, it's not one of those things as you're gaining a whole lot by buying it from someone else.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe the only thing you save is like the system installs, which frankly, considering you're going to have to use the tool so much, you should probably know how to do that anyway. Or at least learn how
Power
to do
consumption can also be. It's hard to get low power stuff that is cost effective that's not already built into a system.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that's a decent point, but in all honesty, at the same time, I mean, unless it's a huge difference.
It is.
But so let me put it this way: unless it's going to be a huge monetary difference
it is.
in how much power.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So my True NAS
Mm-hmm.
is about double the power consumption to the Synology.
Yeah.
The Super Micro is about 3 times that amount
Mm-hmm.
every year. So we're talking about a couple $1,000, roughly a year to run all 3 of them. But I think the power consumption for the Synology is somewhere in the $200 with all the discs spun up and everything like that. The True NAS is like $400, a year at our current energy costs.
Yeah.
And then the Super Micro is more than that. My gaming computer is like on top of that more.
Really?
Yeah.
Man.
So like I've measured all of them. They all add significantly, keeping each of them on. And then there's the heat that they generate, and that little Synology doesn't hardly generate any heat. Now the True NAS is a close second, but the True NAS, to get the same level of like whatever, is like now $5,000 roughly.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're talking about discs.
Yeah.
So I have a terabyte, 512 gig Intel. What was the thing that they had? Optane modules in the Synology. To have that same sort of thing, it would cost extra. Blah blah blah. So ultimately, it is cheaper to run the Synology, and it's got enough power to do a lot of things. I haven't really tested like whether or not, so it'll run like a media server, which you don't need a ton of stuff to run one anymore. Sometimes you need more computational power for like higher power stuff. It'll run most Docker containers I have running on it, so that's one thing I haven't been able to get out of the True NAS, because it's not running True NAS Scale, it's running True NAS Core. I think one of them's based off FreeBSD, the other one's based off Linux. With Linux, you get containers and containerization. With that, you don't. The Synology is just basically a Linux box, which you're just buying.
Gotcha.
So does that change your answer any, or do you think that you would still just build yourself one?
Yeah, I mean, it might, in all honesty. I guess it would. I'd have to price out what the difference in cost of the components versus the energy draw is. I'm just surprised they take that much energy, period. Because like my gaming rig, if I don't turn it on for the whole month, that I've done a couple times, it's only like a $10 difference in my energy bill. As opposed to running it almost 24/7 when I have like it running a gaming server or something like that. So to think that the NAS is, 10 to 20 times more energy draw than that.
Well, I'm talking about per year.
Okay, per year.
So
but even then, my gaming computer, if it was on almost 24/7, would be like $120 a year. So you're saying that's at least double.
Well,
that.
So maybe I've got the figures off a little bit. But what I'm saying is, when I measured it, my gaming computer was like 4 times as much in cost.
Okay.
To run. The True NAS Mini was like 2 times as much, and then the other thing that I've got, the Super Micro, is like 3 times as much.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
it's not as much as the. But let me also put it this way: I've got some JBODs in there. I've got other things that are consuming power. I probably have more hard drives than you have. I bet you have all SSDs.
Yeah, that's true.
That increases the cost. It's not by a lot, but it does increase the cost for each one. And your gaming, how many gaming computers do you have?
Just the one.
Just the one? I have 3.
Yeah, okay. Well, you're counting all 3 of them.
Yeah, I'm counting all 3 of them.
Okay.
So it's significantly, but this thing will run all the services that I have running on all 3 of my larger computers. So, you know, the only thing that, like, if I wanted to do some light mining or something like that, it won't do it.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, so I still, like, per year, it's like $400, $500 for me to run all the other things. And I have like a comparable amount of services that I have left over if I just run this, and it's like $200, I think. I might be wrong. It might be 100. It might be 120.
Yeah,
it's still less.
Can you self-service the ones you buy? Like if a hard drive fails, are you free to just go buy any hard drive, or do you go buy their hard drive or something?
No, I went and bought Seagates.
Okay.
They're not the hard drives they suggested. I just bought some enterprise grade Seagate hard drives that have been renewed, quote unquote. I think somebody used them for a little while, but they all tested good. All their smarts are good and everything like that. So I'm not unhappy with those. So it's not like a terrible deal. I like putting things together. So it feels a little bit like I cheaped out buying it.
Well, I mean, it costs whatever it costs, right? So like you got to price out your components versus the energy draw and all that. But your NAS is something I feel like you are going to be interfacing with a lot. And so I feel like it is very important to understand how it works and to be able to service it if it breaks. It's kind of like if you're really going to get into like PC gaming, you should build a PC at least once.
Right.
That way, even if you go buy a pre-built or something like that and something breaks, you know what to do. You know, it's just like I believe anyone that's a power user for any operating system should like go take an online class on it. Like go really learn how Windows work. Go really learn how Linux works, or whatever your system of choice is. So, when you're in your position that you know a lot about it, it just comes down to cost. Really, what's the cheaper thing for you to do? If you're someone trying to get into it, I probably would recommend, hey, you should maybe try and build your first one, just so you know actually how it operates.
Yeah. And I built my first NAS. I got like an old, it wasn't even an enterprise grade kit. It was like an old Celeron computer from like the early 2000s. And I kitted it out with some extra RAM and put some hard drives in it. And it was dog slow. It was terrible, but it was a good experiment. I learned a whole lot. And that's why I bought the True NAS, was because I knew that it was like a good thing to have, because it was very stable and stuff like that once I figured out what I was doing. That said, have you used any containerization in like your home lab, or have you done anything like that?
I've done like educational projects with it. I've not done anything personal. So like I've gone in and built containers and put stuff up on repos and things like that, just because it's a good skill set to have. But I certainly don't have like any active containers running in my home.
Yeah, I have probably about 30 that I run in my home. I have 2 Jellyfin servers that I run, and this is all just for experimentation. 2 Jellyfin servers that I run. I have my own, is it called Chone? Is that what it is? Anyways, it's a detector for changes on websites. So like there's a couple of websites that I'm interested in being able to get alerts for whenever things change or they update certain things on them, like articles or things like prices and stuff like that. So it'll send me an alert every time it does that. I have, I'm trying to remember, I have a Portainer instance, which makes containerization management a little bit easier. It also makes it a little bit easier to go in and spin up and spin down your containers. You don't have to do it from the command line. Even though I do suggest, like, I learned how to do everything with them from the command line, so I suggest people do that first. But once you get kind of used to it, it's a little easier to see the graphical interface of what's going on. And then I have a couple of other containers that, like, they help me to organize my media files. They run like a file browser. I have one that runs a wiki page and things like that. So this is like documentation and stuff like that. What I really want to get into next is building my own containers and then having a pipeline to every time I update one, it goes through and updates the container automatically. I have a thing called Watchtower that'll do that on Portainer, which is really nice because I haven't had to update any of my containerized systems in forever. Like they're just always up to date. Where I was using Ansible to update all of my Linux systems, but I started running into some problems when things would like start having dependencies issues. It would just hang, and then I would just be stuck there. And you can't, like, even as smart as your Ansible like playbook might be, it'll never be smart enough to overcome that thing. So I don't know. I think I understand that you just kind of do it for work and everything like that, but I think you're selling yourself a little bit short by like not having some of those like container things that you could just play around with and like build something and just have it available, because it's so easy to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's really not hard to build a container, and I've done like POCs for like putting some of our enterprise software within containers and things like that, you know. But I think for me, I will start getting back into those things again because my kid's now finally about to go be in like public school,
Right.
And like in school all day, and then she'll come home and because right now my life is I wake up with my kid, I take care of my kid goes to school, she goes to school after I'm already supposed to be at work, so that I'm immediately at work. She gets back before I'm off work, so as soon as I'm off work, I'm taking care of her. And let me tell you, man, by the time it's like 8 o'clock at night and she goes to bed, I'm not.
Yeah, you don't want to do anything. I know.
Yeah, but I'll get there.
Yeah. Well, I just the reason I was saying that was not so much for like you have the knowledge of how to build them, but there's a different skill set that you use to kind of maintain them and keep them stable.
That is true.
And so I kind of took my approach of learning containerization the opposite way. I've learned how to like maintain and keep them stable. And like, so like I kind of build my CI/CD backwards. I start with, I want everything to be stable, not everything to be updated. And so how do I get stability first? And then I start like, okay, well then how do I make it so that I don't really have to touch this? Because my philosophy for running operations is that I should never be seen. Nobody should ever have to interact with me if they don't need to. And if they're interacting with me, it means something went horribly wrong, and that's something I'll fix and never happen again. So I work a little bit different than some of the other people that we work with do, which I think you know that about me anyways, right? So like all of my stuff, whether I'm designing a network or doing anything like that, I'm thinking about what is the most elegant way that I can create something that is super stable. That's so back to the thing that we were talking about at the beginning, the buying a NAS. That's kind of why I bought a NAS, because there's a stability component there. And when my Pi-hole and my other things that run in my house need to be available for my family to use, and I'm about to go on like a week-long trip, I don't want my wife to have to do anything more than press a button to turn it back on.
Yeah, that's true.
So that was the one thing that we left out in the other one. There is a little bit more. Now, there are plenty of admins out there who can build a server and keep it super stable. But there's something nice if you do it all day about just being able to buy something off the shelf, and plug it in and just turn it on and it works.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. But with the container thing, there's a slightly different mindset to building the software versus operationalizing it, and I think if you learn how to operationalize it and what are the challenges with it first, that does really affect the way that you build things like that,
Yeah.
I mean, I've definitely seen that with some other people that I know that design networks and stuff like that. They'll come in, they'll do their thing. They don't care if it's stable or not afterwards. They built the thing that they were told to build, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think containers are kind of the same way, and servers are kind of the same way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. I don't know, man. That's all the topics I had written for today. It feels like anticlimactic to like end right there. Just talking about technology. We didn't talk about brewing or anything like that for a midway season episode.
We talked about a home brew that we're going to do again, and I'm hoping if the yield is big enough this year, because we'll just have bigger fruit, even if we get the same number, that we can experiment and do like more than one batch of something.
That would be a lot of fun. I've got some ideas, and I almost feel like we could make this into like a citrus breakfast wine sort of thing.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like a bottled mimosa kind of deal.
Kind of deal.
Okay.
And it have like a figginess to it.
Mm-hmm.
We could also possibly do that with like some peach stuff.
Yeah, I wonder, like a lemon. What do we call that? The thing that had been in Skeeter Pea. We made it with.
Oh, limoncello.
Limoncello, yeah, like a limoncello with fig in it.
Well,
that could be really good.
It's kind of where I'm going, right there, because I need to make some more Skeeter Pea limoncello. I don't like the name Skeeter Pea so much.
Yeah, it doesn't sound great.
It doesn't sound as appetizing. Well, so one thing for those who are going to Self, we'll be at Southeast Linux Fest this year, and then during the break we've got some D&D plans. I know you're going to be running a one shot that we might talk about. We've got some things where we're thinking about doing some more brewing projects, and we've got kind of a tech project that we've been working on and off on for a while that we might talk about after we actually do some coding on it.
Okay.
So you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yep.
Okay. So we got a couple of things that we could be talking about, and I may I don't know. I'm kind of getting the itch to get back into studying for the CCIE and just skip the CCNP. I'm not sure. So I don't know. I might. We may have some talks about studying and stuff like that too coming up in the next semester. So I said semester, next half of the year. So I'm looking forward to everything. Should be great. But I think that's everything for today's episode, unless you got something else you want to talk about.
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, this has been Season 6, Episode 10 of the Beer and Broadband Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully this will come out on May 29th, 2023. And if we don't catch you before then, hopefully we'll catch you next time when we come back around the fall. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you later.